Hello, everybody. This is Stephen Barchetti. I want to welcome you to my Industry Leader Series, where I interview experts in their field for your financial planning, your life planning. These are things you have to take care of, and we're lucky to have Alexis Martin-Neely on the line with us. She has written a new book titled Wear Clean Underwear, and the title comes from her mom's advice when she was younger. My mom told me the same thing.
Yep.
If you're in an accident, you better wear clean underwear. And I got a good laugh out of it from my mom because, when I was 18, 20 years old, you might be familiar with the term commando.
Uh-huh.
And, that's part of the reason she's telling me to wear underwear, let alone clean underwear. But you laugh about it when you're younger, but it really is a serious subject. When tragedy strikes, there's more than underwear that need to be in place. And Alexis is a family lawyer from California, and I want to welcome her to the call.
Thank
Alexis,
you. Thank you for having me here.
Super. Just tell us a little bit of the inspiration behind the book. Just like I was telling everybody, my mom gave me the same advice. What led to you writing the book?
Well, I'm a mom myself, and I have two children. And the first time that I went out on a date with my now ex-husband, but with my husband at the time, and we left our daughter at home, I realized that there was a big hole in our estate plan, that we had named guardians for her, but we had not done everything that we needed to do to make sure that she would not be taken out of our home. See, we were out at dinner, having a nice time, and all of a sudden, I was a new mom at the time, and worrying about all the little things. And it occurred to me that if anything happened to us that night, that the police would show up at our house and our babysitter would be there with my mobile phone number and our neighbor's phone number and nothing else. And my mobile phone number obviously wouldn't be working because I would have been in an accident, and the neighbors didn't have the legal authority to stay with my daughter, and everybody that I had chosen to take care of her if anything happened to us lived on the East Coast, and we were on the West Coast. And I realized, oh my God, my daughter could be potentially taken out of our house into the arms of strangers, and until the police could figure out what to do. And that just scared me to death as a parent. And then when I looked into it more, I was a lawyer at the time and still am, and when I looked into it some more, I found out that 69% of parents have never even named legal guardians for their kids at all. And then of the 31% who have, most of them have made at least one of 6 common mistakes. And I knew that I needed to do something to get the straight information out there to parents about what they need to do to make sure that their kids and their money and their family and themselves will be taken care of if anything happens.
Exactly. Now, like I was talking with you earlier about people seem to have the attitude, that happens to other people. Tragedy and, accidents and disease, at a young age. And if I understand it correctly, even in your own family, you had folks pass away that, didn't have all the documents in place. And, just because you were in the family and an attorney,
right?
They still didn't have those steps in place.
Right.
For one
reason
and that's
and that's really the scariest thing, is that I did have family members that thought they had everything taken care of. And that's the key word, thought, is because a lot of people think that they've got all of this in place. Oh, yeah, I've done a will, or oh, yeah, I've done my estate planning. And then the truth of the matter is that they don't. They come to the end of their life and find out, or really their family finds out, because it's too late for them to find out, but their family finds out that there's a lot of loose ends that have not been tied up. For example, my father-in-law, he had spent a few $1,000s to work with a lawyer on his estate plan, thought everything was taken care of, and then after his death, we were dealing with the probate court, having to go through a nightmare process because his lawyer had not made sure that all of his assets were owned in the right way. And, my father-in-law thought it had all been done right. And at the time, I thought that this lawyer must have committed malpractice. Well, then I went to one of the best firms in Los Angeles when I got out of law school to become an associate attorney in the estate planning group, and found out that it wasn't malpractice. This was common practice. This was the same way that all lawyers not all lawyers, but most lawyers did things, and I was absolutely shocked. And then my own father, even after I was an estate planning lawyer, he died without a complete plan in place because, I had been talking to him about it for some time and working with him on it. But once he got cancer, and he could not talk about his estate planning anymore. To him, he had to fight, and if he was talking about his estate planning, that meant that he was giving up. And so it became a discussion we could not have, and ultimately he ended up dying with an incomplete plan in place because we just could never finish the conversation. Time ran out.
That's one of the things in the United States that's a taboo subject, talking about money and death.
Yes.
And if you don't talk about it, you can't raise your family's education about it. You can't plan for it. You shouldn't talk about money in a greedy fashion, like that kind of always money discussion or death planning discussions. But, if you don't educate your kids, who is? You don't get it in school, So when you can't get it from your family, where are you going to get it? So,
right. It's absolutely critical to have these conversations when you're young, when you're just starting out in life, before you get married, when you're married, and really at every life stage. I believe that your lawyer is someone that you should have a relationship with. That's one of the things that one of my missions is to change the way lawyers think, and then the other side of it is to change the way the American public thinks about lawyers, because the way that we think about lawyers in America is, well, besides, all the bad jokes about lawyers and how bad they are, but what we generally think about lawyers is that they are just there to draft documents and to be called upon, in the event of a crisis situation. But that's really the wrong kind of thinking. Your lawyer should be someone that you have an ongoing personal relationship with, that you call whenever you're making any sort of a financial or legal decision, because that your lawyer is someone who's on your side and has a fiduciary relationship with you, which means that they cannot steer you wrong. And so you really want to be using this relationship to guide you to make good decisions for you and your family. And, I get it that a lot of people are afraid to do that because they're afraid of paying hourly fees and they don't know what it's going to cost. And so they don't call their lawyer when, before they make these important decisions. But I believe that you should, that you should have that kind of a relationship with a lawyer, and that you should turn to this person throughout your lifetime.
Exactly. I fully agree with me being a mortgage planner. Same concept.
Right.
These are life strategies, not,
right.
Well, this week I'm going to do my will and never look at it again.
Exactly. Exactly, yeah. You want to find trusted advisors who are going to be able to really guide you to the best decisions throughout your lifetime.
Yeah. So a few $1,000s over the course of your life is nothing, but that non-planning could be $50,000 in probate.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
Of pre-planning.
Sure,
so,
yeah. Yeah, not to mention family fighting. I think that's one of the biggest risks of not planning ahead is family infighting. We see family infighting happening all the time, and generally the reason we see that happening is because people have not had open lines of communication during life or before a crisis situation. And when you do, you can avoid the family infighting. But when you don't, that's when the fighting happens.
Yep. It was real distraught for me watching my grandmother pass, and her kids, she had 6 kids. Mm-hmm. Her 6 kids fighting over her estate, and her estate was so tiny that it made me nauseous that they were fighting over it because, she just passed, and you should be in the mourning state, and they're fighting over, $10,000 between 6 people. I was like, give me a break,
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually I'm working on a book right now about how families in conflict can use these conflicts to realize that they're actually great opportunities for internal personal growth, because that fighting that those 6 siblings were doing wasn't really about the money or any of the property. It was about the unresolved issues that they had growing up that were coming out now in their grief. And if they can use those as opportunities to heal whatever happened, it'd be great. But most of the time people don't. Most of the time what ends up happening is that it ends up tearing families apart.
Exactly. I had to just turn that off, when that was happening. But,
the biggest fight I ever saw was my ex-husband and his sister in the storage unit after their mom died. We were down in Florida going through all her things, and they got in such a big fight over some of the belongings that we had to rent 2 separate shipping trucks to ship back the things, which of course cost us each a fortune when we could have just shared one. But it was such a disagreement, and the things that they were fighting over ended up in our garage broken. Not even used in our houses, because it wasn't the things that they were fighting about. It was their underlying unresolved issues.
Well, let's review. You do have 9 steps to, like a checklist for folks to make sure things are in order, and I do believe your family wealth inventory, is that part of it? Your overall picture, so folks have a checklist?
Yeah, that's part of the 9 steps really have to do with making sure that your kids would be taken care of if anything happens to you. This is really the first step for every parent, regardless of whether they have $10 in the bank or $10 million in the bank. Every parent really needs to make sure that they get their kids taken care of first and foremost. And so the 9 steps go through specifically what parents need to do to make sure that their kids will be taken care of in the right way if anything happens to them. And the first step really has to do with choosing the people that you would want to raise your kids with your values in the event that you are in an accident. And for many people, that's the hardest thing. A lot of people say, well, I haven't gotten my planning taken care of yet because I don't know who to choose to raise my kids if anything happens to me. I can't choose the right people.
They get tripped up on step 1 and then leave it there. They
leave it there, right. And so they don't do any of the steps. And here's my answer to that always. My answer to that always is, if you don't decide, the decision gets left up to a judge.
Yeah,
Think about who the judge is going to choose.
He doesn't know your family. He doesn't know what to do. So that's where this whole probate nightmare comes in. If you can't pick something, the court has to figure it out. And they're not evil. Attorneys aren't evil. When you don't spell this out, they have to do it. So this is the biggest reason folks need to buckle down. If you're responsible enough to have a child, you better get this done. It's that simple.
Exactly. And if you can't decide, typically it's because there's people that you don't want. And if there are people, that jumps us ahead to step 8, but that's how you actually can start the process of choosing who you do want, is to think about all the people that you would never want to have raise your kids. And then think about at least 1 or 2 people, preferably 3, that's your best bet, who would be better than that person.
So sometimes if they're on the sticking point, then fine. Start with who you don't want.
Start with who you don't want. That's right.
That might get your brain working. And
that's right, because then you can at least think of people that are better than that person. Okay, so that's number 1, step 1. Step 2 is to legally document your choice of at least 3, and as I said earlier, I'd really like you to have at least 3, at least friends or family members who you would want to raise your kids for the long term. Now, I do have some resources for you for step 1 and step 2. If you just cannot choose who to name, or you want to go through a very simple process, go to ChooseTheRightGuardian.com, and you can download an e-article there that will walk you through a very simple process, but very effective process that I take all of my clients through who I work with on this, on choosing the right guardians. Okay, and so that's going to be step one.
I could put that web link on this page that folks are listening to.
Okay.
It turns into a replay. I'll put it right under your book link.
Great, and I'm going to give you a few links like that, so we can add those on there.
Yeah. And so that's number 2, document it for long term.
Right. So step 1 is choose the right people, and you can find an article about that at choosetherightguardian.com. Step 2 is legally document your choice. Now, you might say, well, I don't know how to legally document my choice, or I don't want to have to go to a lawyer to do that. Okay, I have a resource for that for you as well. That is kidsprotectionplan.com. Is a free website where you can legally document who you want to raise your kids if anything happens to you. It's free. It's easy. There's absolutely no excuses now not to do it. So that's at kidsprotectionplan.com.
I have that one already on the site for everybody.
Right. Okay.
Just need to click on it.
Now, step 3 is that you want to choose local friends or family. These are people who live within 20 minutes of you, who your kids know, who your kids love and trust, who are going to be able to immediately be at your house to comfort your kids and keep them secure if anything happens to you. So think about it. The people that you name as long-term guardians, they may not be people who live very close to you. They may be people that live across the country. They can live anywhere. They can even live outside of the country potentially. So if you want to make sure that your kids are never for a minute in the arms of strangers, you also have to name people for the short term, people who will be able to be there right away, people who your children know and trust. Okay, and so that's going to be step 3. And then you'll document that choice of who you want in step 4. So you're going to document the people that you've chosen as short-term guardians.
Super.
Now, step 5 is that you're going to give the short-term guardians who you've chosen the legal documentation that they'll need if you're in an accident, and make sure that they know what to do if they're called upon. Okay, so you don't want to just name people short-term guardians and not tell them what to do. You want to make sure that they know exactly what to do if anything happens to you. Okay, and that's step 5. And then step 6 would be to carry an ID card in your wallet. Okay, so I have an ID card that I carry in my wallet that says, I'm a parent, I have minor children at home, if anything happens to me, these are the people that should be contacted. And it lists out specifically all of the people that should be contacted if anything happens to me. And those are the people that I've named as short-term guardians who have the legal documentation that they need in hand if anything happens.
So that card puts everything in motion, so to speak.
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
Card starts going down the line.
Mm-hmm. And it really lets people know exactly what they need to do if they find you. If you've been in an accident, now they know exactly who to call. A card like this would have been a huge saver for. There was a family in San Diego in July of 2006. They were on vacation together, and they were in a car accident. And unfortunately, the parents were did not recover. Let's just say that they did not survive the car accident. The 3 little boys did survive the car accident. They had 3 little boys in the car with them. They did survive the car accident. The boys had to spend a short amount of time in foster care because now it was hours, but even hours is not okay to parents. But it was hours until the police could figure out where the family members were, because they were, as I said, on vacation in Arizona, and all of the family members lived in San Diego, and nobody knew who they were or how to find them. Had the parents had ID cards in their wallet that said who they were and who should be contacted, this could have been avoided. Exactly. So that is step 6. Now, step 7 is that you need to tell your long-term guardians what to do if they're called upon, where to find your long-term guardianship documentation, and also you want to leave your long-term guardians specific instructions about how you want your kids to be raised. What are the values, insights, stories, and experiences that you want to leave behind for your children? And that's something that's oftentimes overlooked. You know, we all have good intentions, and we intend to do these things, and we intend to leave these types of instructions, but these are the types of things that sometimes we don't get around to. So that's really important.
Well, one of the things that I saw on your website, because I did study it quite a bit, because I literally refer my clients to folks like yourself, and I thought it was a great tie-in, was the part about the digital archive for your loved ones.
Right.
And in this step 7, when you're giving the long-term people your wishes and everything, you could be also giving them that digital archive. And if people aren't, what's the digital archive? Now that we live in this digital age with all of this fancy stuff, you could be taking your videos and audio recordings and all of your photos and all of your family heirlooms and literally leaving messages to your family. And when you don't think about those little things, people pass away and you don't have anything. So, you could literally be recording these, like Alexis is saying, your values and what your family thinks and what you want to see in the future. And kids, no matter what age they are, they could be playing that and smiling, remembering you, because it could be a celebration. It doesn't have to be a depressing kind of a recording,
Yeah, well, it's my dad died 5 years ago, and he had left a voicemail on my cell phone, and after he died, I listened to it all the time, and it was just a little message where I said, "Lex, it's your dad," and it was him, and then the message got deleted accidentally, and that was one of the worst days of my life. And one of the things that we do with our clients that we work with as personal family lawyers is we take them through a process after all of the estate planning documents are created, after the wills are created and the trusts are created. We take them through a process. We call it priceless conversations. And the priceless conversation is a 30 to 45-minute interview where we interview our client and we ask them questions about things like, how do you want your kids raised if anything happens to you? How did you choose your guardians and why? Who do you want your kids to have a relationship with even though they weren't chosen as guardians? How do you want the money to be used for them? All of these types of things that we intend to leave as instructions to the guardians, but sometimes we don't get around to. We interview the client, we put this onto an audio CD, and then we upload this audio CD to a website called storyofmylife.com that we have a relationship with that allows us to do these uploads at no charge for our clients. And that gets stored there. And then clients can create a new audio like this with their lawyer every single year if they choose to on one of our membership programs. And now we're creating a real legacy, not just plain old estate planning documents that are cold. And yes, they're effective. They pass on money and things like that, but they're cold. We pass on a real living legacy, what we call a legacy library. And I got to tell you, Steve, I would give anything at this point to have something like that for my dad. The way I felt about that little 2-minute not even 2 minute, 30-second voicemail message on my cell phone that ultimately was erased, I would do anything to have a 30 or 45-minute CD or a whole set of CDs of my dad talking about me and my life and what he wants for me and his values and what's important, and to be able to share that with my kids. It would be so meaningful. And we can do that for our families now. The only trouble is that sometimes we don't get around to it. And so if you can make it part of an already existing process of when you do your estate planning to make sure that this is included, then that's probably the best way to make sure you get it done.
Well, to me, that step right there, number 7, long-term instructions, and then talking about story of my life, family legacy, these digital recordings, that's worth the price I would pay you for your fees.
Absolutely.
That step right there. And like you said, the sad thing is my ex-wife passed away 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And just like you, the only thing we have recorded is the stupid cell phone.
Yep.
Hey, this is Natalie. Thanks for calling. Leave your message.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
And, that pisses me off. But, you until you start going down these paths of taking steps, doing these things, you drop the ball, and then how do you replace it? You can't. So
you can't. You just can't. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, that to me as well is worth the price of the planning. When I did my own conversation for my kids, it was transformative in a number of ways, because not only did it give me the peace of mind of knowing that now if anything does happen to me, they have this recorded documentation of how I feel about them and what I want for them. But it also helped me to focus more on what I do want for them now. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day of life, paying bills, getting homework done, all the little things that come up, that sometimes we don't get around to really thinking about what do we want for our kids. What are the values that we want to pass on, and how do we do that? And so it's a great opportunity to sit down and really focus on that, and then you can start to integrate that into your life on a regular basis, just incrementally, just by talking about it. It just seems to happen. And so, step 7 is an important one.
I think I'm going to expand that one just in general on the whole family legacy, what my family values are, because just like personal coaching, it keeps you on track, and it will grow. When you can't chart where you want to be, you can't get there. So when you physically chart these things and grow as a family, and then listen to it 20 years from now, and you've got to the point you wanted to get to, it was because of that whole planning process. And you could pass that same kind of discipline to your children.
Right.
So, they're doing it for their children. So, legacy is important. I mean, like I say, without planning, you can't get anywhere.
Yep, absolutely.
Any venture of life. So I'm definitely going to go a lot deeper on that with all of the different areas in my life.
Absolutely,
so
great.
I got you off track. We need to hit step 8.
Yes, so step number 8 is one that's often overlooked by people, and that is to be sure to exclude anyone who you would never want raising your kids. And this is something that's overlooked because people don't know that they can do that. And if there is someone in your life that you would never want to raise your children, then you want to document that. Now, you don't need to go tell them that you've documented it. You don't need to go say, hey, you're not going to ever raise my kids. That wouldn't be very nice. But you do want to do this confidentially. Make sure that it's a confidential document that's created that will only be brought out in the event that these people try to challenge the decision that you've made. And that's going to protect your decision. And then number 9 is to make sure that you are providing for immediate and protected access to the money that you're leaving behind for your children. And you do this by using trusts, and you do this by working with a lawyer. I don't recommend that you do this step on your own. I do recommend that you work with a lawyer. You can do the first 8 steps on your own. But this 9th step, providing for the immediate and protected access to the money that you're leaving behind, is really something that you should do with a lawyer. If you're worried about how the money that you're leaving behind is getting to your kids and to their guardians, and oftentimes you shouldn't even name your guardian who's taking care of your kids as the one who's going to take care of the money. We could talk about that when we talk about the 6 mistakes parents make. But you've got to leave a plan and a structure so that the people that are raising your kids have immediate and protected access to the money that you're leaving behind.
Exactly. And this confidentiality part ties into the will and trust. When you properly prepare someone's will and trust, it is private. The public doesn't hear the laundry list of what you want done, what you don't want done, and that's a topic I think is important to most people. Whether you've got, $10,000 or $10 million, it's your family business. You don't want it in the local paper and, probate.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is a lot of people say, oh, well, I have a will in place, so I'm fine, everything's fine. No, that's not the case. A will is not what you want to leave behind for your family. It's an okay start, but a will is totally public. A will gets, put everything that's going through your will is going to go through the probate court, and that is a matter of public record. And the only way to keep things private is to also have a trust, and to have everything titled in the name of your trust. Okay? And so that is absolutely the key to making sure that everything is as easy as possible, is to establish a trust, Make sure everything's titled in the trust. Make sure that your trust is kept up to date, and make sure that the trust is prepared by a lawyer who is going to make sure that everything is protected in the best way, that it has enhanced provisions in it to ensure that your kids don't end up with the money outright, to ensure that the kids, that whatever you leave to your kids is protected from their own divorces, from their own lawsuits that they might be in the future, from estate taxes at the time of their death. You can actually do that. You can protect what you're leaving behind for your children. And a lot of people don't know that because a lot of lawyers don't know that. And so you want to make sure that you're working with a lawyer who's going to be able to set that up for your family.
Super. Now, all 9 of those steps seem like common sense, but again, if there's no punch list to go through, no accountability, it gets undone. And,
right.
The whole attitude of it won't happen to me. Accidents happen every day. People get sick every day.
Mm-hmm.
I want to draw my audience's attention back to the multiple links on the web page to get a copy of the book. And there is the web link for the Kids Protection Plan. And after the call, I'm going to post the ChooseTheRightGuardian.com. Those 2 websites will, help you with some of these forms, and also Alexis's website. Her website and contact information is there as well. So, you just can't not take this stuff serious. We're not trying to scare anybody into this kind of thing, but like I said earlier, if you have children, these are basic responsibilities. They should make it a law that you have to be responsible. And there is no, you don't have to be a responsible parent, but, give me a break,
Right.
If you're going to take the step to have one, at least be responsible.
Exactly, and that's really what this is about. A lot of people think that it's about fear, but it is absolutely not. This is not a fear-driven process. This is a process of empowerment. Every single time that I work with a client, after I'm done working with them, they say, wow, that was great. I just wish I would have taken care of this sooner. If I would have known how easy it was, how painless it was, I definitely would have. I just didn't know. And so when you're done with the process, you feel good. This is not a situation where you're going to end the process and feel depressed or anything like that. You end this process and you feel great about having done the right thing for yourself and for your family.
The information and talking about money and family, wills, trusts, taking care of your family, once you get to talk about that more, it is freedom. It is a weight off your shoulders because, once you get these things in place, it's much easier to sleep at night.
Yeah.
It's just like insurance. Nobody likes to pay for it, but if your house burns down, you sure want that policy in place. So
right.
There's plenty of things that are similar to insurance, and you have to have it in place. Now, there's also 6 common mistakes folks are making when they're setting up these structures.
Yes.
And we touched on some of them when we went through the list of 9, but let's just touch on the 6 common mistakes that even the folks that have them in place, they're making these mistakes.
Right, and so that's really the biggest challenge is that a lot of people, Stephen, say, oh, yeah, estate planning, I've got that taken care of. And yet you don't. Because what I find is that most people, especially if they're parents, are making very common mistakes. And it's just, it's not your fault. You just don't know. And the lawyers that you're working with, they don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know about any of this until I became a mom, and I realized that there were holes when I thought about it from a mom's perspective and not just the legal perspective. And so the first mistake that parents are making is one where, as parents, maybe you've chosen guardians, but maybe you've chosen a couple to act as guardian of your kids. So you might name your brother Bob and your sister Sue, or your brother-in-law Bob and your sister Sue. Okay, so that'd be a common thing. You want to name your sister and your brother-in-law. Well, what happens if your sister is in the car with you and you're in a car accident? Now, Sue cannot be guardian of your kids. Do you want your kids to stay with your brother-in-law Bob, or would you want your kids to go on to the next choice of guardians? And in most cases where people are naming a couple to serve as the guardian of their kids, they are not indicating what they would want to happen if anything happens to one of the people that they've named as a guardian.
Exactly.
Right? So,
and thought process, they're just thinking couple, and that's it. So
that's it. That's right.
One of those members would happen to be in the car with you,
that's right.
Then maybe a single parent is raising your kids. So, you have to
exactly
think about that. Could a single parent handle that? I have 4 children, so to have one person look after them is a little bit of a challenge,
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and so that's mistake number 1. You need to think that through if you name a couple to serve as guardians of your kids. The next mistake that people make is that you've got to name enough backups. Like you said, you've got 4 kids. It can be hard to find one person to raise all of them. Well, what happens if the person that you choose at that point in time, for whatever reason, can't do it? It's just too much for them, or maybe something happens to them as well. You've got to have backups named. So you want to name backups, and you want to rank those backups in first, second, third place choice. Okay, so that's mistake number 2, is not naming enough backups to serve. Mistake number 3 is that you want to make sure that you are considering the right things when you're choosing who should be the guardian. And in many cases, people are not considering the right things. They are considering the financial resources of their potential guardians. That is the wrong thing to consider. So I'll sit down with people, and they'll say to me, okay, I want to choose these people as guardians, but they're not going to have enough money to raise my kids. And I say, no. Them having enough money is not the point. It is your job as parent to leave behind sufficient financial resources for your guardians to raise your kids. Period, end of story. Whether you do it through life insurance, you do it through savings, you need to leave behind the right financial resources. It's not up to your guardians to have enough financial resources to raise your kids. And then that brings us to mistake number 4, which is that your guardians may not be the right people to take care of the money. You need to make sure, like I said in step 9, that you are setting up a plan so that your money is taken care of in the right way. And it may not be by the guardians. You might want to name somebody else to take care of the money. That way there's a check and a balance system. There is a system where one person is raising your kids, somebody else is taking care of the money, and they have to communicate because the guardians need to go to the person taking care of the money to get the money, and that gives the person taking care of the money a chance to look and make sure that the guardians are doing things in an acceptable way. So you might want that check and balance system. So that's mistake number 4, is not making a plan for the money. Even if all you're leaving behind is life insurance, you want to have a plan for that money. And so that's mistake number 4.
Life insurance, a lot of folks don't have this monster nest egg. If they're only 40, 45 years old, they don't have this big nest egg. But, a $500,000, $2 million life insurance is not that expensive. So a policy like that could immediately create this nest egg that's not even there.
Well, that's right. And a lot of people, another mistake people are making, this is outside of the 6 common mistakes, but this is also a very common mistake that people are making, is that they are leaving their life insurance to their kids. Well, when you leave your life insurance to your kids, that means that the court has got to get involved in order to distribute that life insurance. Because your kids are not old enough to receive that. They're under the age of 18. And so they cannot receive that, which means that the court has to get involved and a guardian has to be appointed. Now, here's the crazy part. Let's say that parent A dies. So there's parent A and B, and they're, even if they're married, okay? If parent A dies and makes the kids the beneficiary of the life insurance, even though parent B is alive, parent B still needs to go to court and get appointed as the guardian of the kid's estate and be overseen by the court. Even though it's their parent, they need to be overseen by the court because that's what happens when a child inherits anything. And so key is do not name your kids as the guardians of your life insurance. as the beneficiaries of your life insurance.
Well, ideally, it should go into the trust.
Absolutely.
With the trust naming the executor and all of the people you want to take steps.
Mm-hmm.
So the trust is not taxed like a estate plan, correct? Because it's still living, it's going forward.
It does not have to go through the court process. So that's the benefit of having a trust. There's a couple of different benefits, but the first one is, and the primary one is that it keeps everything private, and it gets everything to your heirs as easily as possible. No court process, totally private, much less expensively, and much more quickly. A court process in California, excuse me, can take 9 months, minimum 9 months, more likely over a year before your heirs can get access to those assets. Even in probate-friendly states, some people say, I live in a probate-friendly state. It's still 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months before anybody has access to your money. What are they going to do for 3 to 6 months? I don't want my family to be 3 to 6 months in a crisis-type situation where they've just lost me and now they can't get access to my assets either. That's not okay. And so that's what the trust is going to do. It's going to make it much, much quicker to happen. And then from an estate tax perspective, it can, if it's set up the right way and if it's necessary to be set up that way, it can ensure that taxes are deferred or possibly even eliminated depending on how things are set up. But if you have any potential estate tax issues, if you have enough money to have estate tax issues, you've absolutely got to be working with a lawyer on that. That's not something to do on your own at all.
Yep. Like I say, the price you pay for the planning will pay for itself tenfold in the tax deferment.
Oh, yeah.
Family legacy, that's how you build wealth with the proper plans, not
That's right.
scrutinizing over the money to set things up.
That's right. Yeah, and I'm sure that you see things in the mortgage arena where the houses are not owned in the right way. So if somebody sets up an estate plan, sets up a trust, you need to make sure that your house is in the name of your trust. That's like the most important thing. So you need to right now go out and pull your deed. Well, maybe not right now if you're listening to this in the middle of the night, but the next day you need to go out and pull the deed on your house and take a look at that and make sure that the deed on your property says that your house is in your trust. That's absolutely critically important.
Yep. You do not have to be a big wig with big money to worry about these little things.
No.
If you only have, $50,000, $100,000 worth of equity in your home, if your teenager gets in a car accident and say someone in the back seat was drinking, someone's getting sued, and they're going to sue everybody, and your home equity and your personal name is going to go bye-bye because people want to give an attorney a bad name, but it's those bad apples that are sue-happy that give everything a bad name. So, these steps need to be in place for those crazy things that happen, and otherwise you won't have a future.
Yep, absolutely. This is all very, very important things. And that's the thing about the book, Wear Clean Underwear, is that it's really written from the viewpoint of giving you a starting point regardless of where you are. There's 3 main stories in the book. And the stories focus on, the first story is a family that has young children, and it's really focused on what happens to the kids if something happens to the parents. The second story is focused on what happens to a family where there is a lot of money, and it traces the child through first the death of one parent and then the other, and how this money affects her life. And then the third story is a family that has older children, doesn't have little kids, has older children, and not a lot of money at all. They don't have any assets really, and it focuses on what they needed to do to make sure that things were taken care of the right way. And it's a choose-your-own-adventure style stories. So if you remember the old choose-your-own-adventure books where you read a few pages, you get to a crossroads, and you choose your path. And then you go down another path depending on what you choose, and they're written in that way so you can actually follow your choices down the road and see what makes the most sense for you, and what choices you should make and what choices you have made.
Exactly. I have on the website the free chapter, story number 1, Sarah and Carlos, so folks can get an idea of what you're talking about.
Right.
And, one of those 3 stories will resonate with somebody, whether they have little money, a lot of money, and the whole concept is to get you thinking, and plug yourself into your story.
Exactly. That's right.
And, get on the stick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, number 5, mistake, is where we...
The number 5 mistake is one that we talked about within the 9 steps, and that is not excluding anyone. If you have people that you really should exclude, then it is not doing that. It is not excluding someone from serving as guardian of your kids. And really, you need to think about that if there's anyone in your life you don't want to be guardian. And so that's mistake number 5. And then number 6 is one that we also talked about. It is not naming short-term guardians, only putting in place a plan for the long-term. Parents will often say, "Oh yeah, I've got it all taken care of. I've got a will." Well, okay, where's that will going to be in the short term? Where's the people that you've named as guardians in the short term? What's going to happen? And so you want to make sure that you are also putting in place a plan for the short term and not just the long term, and most parents are overlooking that and not taking care of that.
Well, the short term could also be, even if they do live in your neighborhood, your parents, they're right next door.
Yeah.
Well, they're on vacation in Europe, and
you
get car wrecked, so they're not coming home for 2 weeks. So, the short term is a step you can't overlook because you just never know what's going to happen.
Right.
So, Alexis, there wasn't one item that didn't make sense to me. Everything that we've covered seems like logical items to me, but again, when folks just don't sit down and plan for good times and bad, like I say, it's happened to me, and I used to have the attitude, oh, this stuff happens to other people, but now at 40, I'm starting to get a little bit wiser, and I don't like the fact that I have dropped the ball on some things. So hopefully, none of our listeners get to do what I've done and have regrets. You just can't redo some of these things. So I encourage anyone to look at the book, at the links. I will post that other link on there below the Kids Protection Plan link. And you listeners, take your time, look at these things, and get your ducks in the direction they need to be going. And I want to thank Alexis for taking the time out of her schedule. She has a busy schedule coming up in the next few days. She's been all over the media talking about these items. When you visit her website, you can see what I'm talking about, her past shows that she's been on and what she has coming up in the future. So hopefully we could get Alexis come back and talk about the corporate side of it. A lot of you guys are, small business owners, whatever. If you work from home as a small business owner, you should have some type of corporate structure.
Absolutely.
And, that's where else Alexis could help, because as Alexis says, if you don't have a business structure, you might as well call it a hobby.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
I'm in alignment with her because I've been in business for 20 years. So a lot of it even goes back to just protecting yourself, besides the fact that the business structures have you paying less taxes, which goes into your family nest egg over time. So you don't always have to make more money, but you could keep more of your money with the proper structures. So the money you pay for these upfront plans and structures is way less than what you're going to gain. So I encourage everybody to keep tuning in, and I will have Alexis back and talking about, all these subjects that we're talking about tonight.
Great. Great. Well, thank you, Stephen, so much for having me here and for making this such an easy interview. You asked all the right questions, and I appreciate you getting this great information out to your followers.
Well, like I say, I appreciate you coming in. I'm going to let you go a couple minutes early here because I know you got a lot on your plate right now. So
I actually have kids waiting for me to put them in bed. They've been so quiet you didn't even know they were here. But they're here. They're waiting for me to come and read to them and put them in bed, so I appreciate that.
Super. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great night.